Most people think to stand out in this business, you need to be the first one on top of the story or the person with the loudest voice or the biggest ratings. In truth, to stand out in the news business, you just need to ask the right questions and demand the right answers.
Provoke, inform, and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Welcome back to the next edition of INN's Tweetline Plus. I'm Dr. Daniel Karras. It is just about 11 hours and 45 minutes into the day of Thursday, April 27th, 2017. Yeah, and we're past the 100-day mark with Donald Trump in office, and of course we're talking about the dead man Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is dead. The man that was there, that came in, that was elected, is no longer there. Within that transition period of the 90 days, somehow something happened, and a new Donald Trump has emerged, and the old one has gone to pasture, has kicked the bucket, or and in many ways, as we talk and discuss things, we will be eulogizing his presidency and the movement that was the anti-establishment. Now, as I said before, the anti-establishment doesn't necessarily have to end with Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, if it is about individual freedom, it is about the rights and freedoms of America, then the president no longer, it does not actually make the public, it doesn't make, the president doesn't make America. We, the people, make America. It's our individual efforts. And so we've elected a anti-establishment president, but he had no support from Congress. We saw what Congress was doing. We've seen what Congress. We see that. And we've also seen that Obama has never left Washington. He's still primarily a rogue president. Most of the operatives who are working the deep state, the bureaucrats, they're working for Obama. They're following Obama's order. It's as if Obama has never left. It's the reality that Obama is the rogue president of the United States. This is what's happening. And so Donald Trump is sort of stuck. He's stuck in the quagmire. He can't move any further. It is up to us in the 2018 midterm elections. We have to now deal with the deep state. And who are the deep state? They're the bureaucrats. They're the people we elect in Congress. Unless the deep state, the Congress, is drained, and we have to, this is our voting here. This is how we have to change our vote. No more Democrats, basically. Democrats, what they do? Democrats are famous. Historically, they build the deep state. They build bureaucracy. That's what they do. Their job, their entire job creation platform is government. It is bureaucracy. This is their forte. So if you elect a Democrat, any Democrat, what you're going to get is more government, more deep state. It doesn't matter what they promise you. What you will get is more deep state. Look at what's happened to the black America. They've had all these so-called great black leaders, the civil rights leaders, and because they've all been Democrats, they're not seeing anything from it. Well, all you have to do is go to Yvette Carnell's channel. She's an activist in Chicago. She's a real activist. She's not George Soros funding a think tank. She's in Chicago. She's on the ground. She sees what's going on, and it's bothering her. She's trying to figure out, how do I get out of this? How do you change black America? How do you change the future of black America from something being pessimistic to something to being hopeful? So I encourage you. I've had her listed in my channel here. I do have her listed someplace. Go take a look at her channel. See what she's saying. See how that even through Obama, they feel Obama's let them down because they didn't get anything. But what do you expect from a Democrat? If a Democrat's going to build government, then when they get more money, they're not going to give it to the people. They're going to give it to themselves. They're going to create more government. They're going to create a larger bureaucracy. They're going to create more agencies. And so every time you have a new agency created, instead of a person going to see one person, you have to go see 5 people now for help. And any one of those 5 people can turn you down. So you get approval from 4 people, and the 5th person turns you down, you're dead in the water. This is the way bureaucracy works. You can actually, and talking about going international, take a look at what Modi's doing. Prime Minister Modi of India. He's doing that. He's trying to drain the swamp of bureaucracy. He's doing the same thing that Donald Trump is trying to do. Now, he's doing it from a different perspective. He's more along the lines of a socialist, but he still recognizes the problem as being bureaucracy, and that the bureaucracy is what holds people back, is what creates poverty. And the thing is that this is the thing that we're going to have to deal with. And so as we move on with our eulogy, I will bring in, because I'm happy that you're commenting down below. Please keep commenting. I will try to answer your comments in the video. So on Tweetline Plus, I will be answering your comments here in Tweetline Plus. And so we'll deal with the first one, actually. The first one is, I go and check to see who's posting what. And I do a background check on your profile. I follow your Google Plus profile. I follow back to who you are, whatever links you have. This one is it comes from a blogspot person. It's Zilla ZILLAHNOIR 737, and it's blogspot.com. This is his. I'm not going to complete the entire comment. It's just his comment is basically a rant. It's about what the Jews are doing, and I'm not offended by the term because I'm not Jewish. I'm actually Syrian. A lot of the Middle Eastern dress, the beard and everything. This is typically Middle Eastern. The beard and long hair represents the philosopher kings. This is the thing, and so what happens? The Jews have it, the Muslims have it, the Greeks have it, the Syrians have it, and the Syrians and the Egyptians, the real Syrians and Egyptians, they're not, or which are basically called Coptic. They're not Muslims. They're Christians. The Syrians are Christian. The real Egyptians, the Coptics, are Christian. They're not Europeans, though. Christianity did not emerge from Europe. Christ wasn't blue-haired and with blonde eyes. I mean, blue eyes and blonde hair. That's not Christ. Christ was Middle Eastern. He was Jewish. I mean, those who complain about, Jews, all Jews are all the same. Well, Christ was a Jew. And the thing is, what happens is that the belief in Christ is you believe that Christ was the fulfillment of the Old Testament. This is why you have the change. You also believe that Christ is as a Christian, you believe that Christ is the Son of God. The Muslims say no, he's just simply a prophet. This is the distinction between the primary distinction between Islam and Christianity is that Christ is a prophet, and the Muhammad is also a prophet. They don't view Christ as the Son of God, but they do recognize the early Christian church because, of course, they came after. Islam comes 700 years after Christ. And modern Judaism, even later. I mean, so what happens is that when you rant about Jews, as soon as you say the term, oh, these Jews, whatever point you're making is lost now. It's completely, no one's going to follow anything further, even though it may be true. Because you've basically, instead of identifying a particular group, you've now smeared an entire people with something that may not necessarily be true. It may not be true to all Jews. From my perspective, is that from what I've researched, is that rather than going to these sites that say, oh, the Jews, these are basically Aryan nation sites or anything that's so-called anti-Semitic, even though anti-Semitism doesn't exist. You can't. Anti-Semitism does not apply to Jews. Because most Jews today are European. The Europeans are not Semites. They're converts to Judaism. Arguably. Because there needs to be an asterisk there. That needs to the Judaism of today is not true Judaism. It's a false Judaism. So that's why I have to sort of put an asterisk there. And to sort of identify what's going on here, because you can't say Judaism is the Jews or that they're Semitic, because they're not. Only if if you're Syrian and from that area there, you're born in that area, that you have that genetic link, yes, you're now Semitic. I'm Semitic. And it's by birth. My birth as a Semite, my genetic history, is what makes me a Semite, not my religion or belief. So Semite and Semitic has to do with genetics and not particular is not ideology. Ideology is not Semitic. Ideology is something else. You can take something that is genetically based and say argue that it's ideological. You can argue that point and sort of have that belief, which many Jews do have this belief that their religion, their ideology makes them Semites, even though that's not specifically true. But that's their right to believe. As an American, as an individualist, you can believe whatever you want to believe. This is what we're fighting. We're fighting for the belief, the ideology that people are individually sovereign, that the government can't come in and tell you what to do. There are reasonable limits. You can't go out and murder people. You can't go out and rape them. In other words, you can't go and physically harm somebody else. That's where the law and the Constitution end. Everything else is political. Everything else is based on ideology. This is about global warming, about all these different things. These are all ideologies. And you should not be putting ideology into law. You know, you look at the reality of the situation and you say, okay, where does the law step in? The law steps in not because of a moral issue. The law steps in because somebody has stepped over the boundary where my individual sovereignty ends when I start attacking somebody else's individual sovereignty. So I'll give you an argument here. I'll give you a case. If you're smoking a cigarette and you say, oh, that's my right. Yeah, it's your right to smoke, but because the secondhand smoke is known to cause cancer and affect the person across from you, your right to smoke is now gone because it affects it has a significant detrimental effect on the other person. So that's the end of your right. So it's not that you can't smoke because it's not your right to smoke. You can't smoke because of the way it affects other people. Right? Same thing with drinking and driving, right? You can drink all you want and drive all you want if you're the only person in the world because you're only harming yourself. As soon as you put somebody else there, because you represent a risk to somebody else, a serious risk, drinking and driving is illegal. That's how the boundaries work. If you can create a car that the person can drink and drive and hit somebody else and no one gets hurt, then that's the end of that. You know, that legality ends. So until someone invents a car or a vehicle that when it crashes, nobody gets hurt, these are our legal boundaries. But I think all this gets lost in the sort of ideological battles that people have back and forth. But if you're an individualist, if you're going to go be anti-establishment, then you're not fighting about the ideology. You're not arguing, okay, our ideology should be that everyone should follow what I do. It's about reducing the legal attack, restricting the legal system, the attacks of the legal system, to only where it's necessary. In other words, in order to prevent anarchy, in order to prevent individual sovereignty becoming anarchy, you need to have these boundaries, these limits. Otherwise, you end up with anarchy. And anarchy always devolves into dictatorships. This is why the socialists on the left and the right, if you go into the history of socialism, this is the Nazis who are socialists on the right, you see that they're using anarchists, and they're beating up people. Look at Kristallnacht, the way they send out thugs into the street. Those are the anarchists. They did send out, hire a bunch of people, go, oh, you're going to go out into the street and do this. And they got the people who believed in anarchy, believed that and anarchy is about destroying the establishment. It's not anti-establishment in the sense that, oh, we're against the establishment. They're out to destroy the establishment. They're out to destroy structure in society. That's what they're there for. The nihilists take a different form. The nihilists are more peaceful. They're more, well, supposed to be peaceful. They're about doing nothing all day long. This is what the hippies are. They sit around, they smoke dope, it doesn't matter if you're stoned for 3 or 4 days because you're not going to do anything anyways. This is the nihilist movement. There's no effect to a nihilist because there's no reality. So this is what happens, homosexuality, transgender, all these different issues, because basically Clintons were nihilists. These things don't matter. Right? The LGBTA and all these different groups, they're all nihilists. So the reality of what they are doesn't matter because there is no reality to them. And you hear Alex Jones talking about, well, why don't these people understand what reality is? Because as a nihilist, you've given up reality. Everything's a concept. There is no reality as a nihilist. This is their fundamental argument. And so what happens is that one of the other the poor guy, I'm sorry, you keep posting a link to Roger Stone's something or other. It looks like to be an expose on Roger Stone. But it's on Facebook. This is the thing ironic. Even stuff that's not, that things that are being flagged as false news and sort of being filtered out, including the stuff for Roger Stone. It doesn't matter whether it's for or negative, they just filter it out. And one of the worst places to put political arguments is on Facebook. If you want to be political, go onto Google, stay onto Google, open up a blog, post everything there. Because if it's on Facebook, it's not going to be seen. You have to sign into Facebook in order to see it. For Blogspot, for the blog, you don't have to sign into anything to see it. And so I don't follow outside of basically Google or WordPress. I don't go into Facebook anymore. I've been away from Facebook now for more than a year. There's just nothing there. There's nothing there. You can't do anything with Facebook. Everything is at some point in time is going to be censored. And you're going to be locked. Every once in a while, you're locked out of your Facebook account. You can't get in, and it's a mess. Facebook is a mess. Google, even though they have their terms of service and strikes and guidelines, they're more reasonable, and you don't have the issues. Like I've been both Facebook and Google. I dropped Facebook because Google's reasonable. Facebook isn't. And so I can work with Google, but I can't work with Facebook. So I'm gone with Facebook. Anyways, I don't take anybody's views patently on its face. I introduce it, whatever it's in my notes, is an introduction, and there's more behind it. So Roger Stone is not the face of insider information. He's not my sole source, I should say. He's simply the face for a larger repertoire, a larger bringing in of other sources that allows me to say, okay, this is the way this is going to work, this is the way that's going to work, and basically sort of pull my information in a better trajectory than I would have if I hadn't used that particular trajectory in terms of finding what information is there. And this includes talking about Robert David Steele, and his talk about open intelligence. This is where this channel is going. Instead of simply talking about open intelligence, open source intelligence, this is where INN is going. We're going to open source intelligence. We're going to do it. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to do it. And this is where we're headed in the next few episodes of Tweetline Plus. I've rearranged the channel a little bit. You look at the page on YouTube, the YouTube page. I've rearranged how the shows line up, and that's because we're going into open source intelligence. This is where we're going, and we're going to do it internationally. This is the way things should be done. It's not about talking with things. It's about getting it done. If we're talking about anti-Semitic, we need to get a standard. Who are we going to elect? Use a standard by saying, okay, this person is acceptable, this person is not acceptable. Understanding all at the same time that you're not going to get the ideal. This you understand. We're not going to achieve the ideal on the first try. We move towards the ideal. So if we get someone who's better than what was there before, good. If he's not ideal, then that's fine as well. It's just a matter of moving the lines forward enough, bit by bit, election by election, that we can slowly drain the swamp, give Donald Trump more room, and sort of say, hey, We the people are back. We're listening now. We're going to engage with you, Donald Trump. We're not going to leave you alone. We cannot afford to leave Donald Trump alone. Our anti-establishment movement that we're talking about is about bringing about a change to government where we the people step forward. So Donald Trump took the step forward. He said he'd be the anti-establishment president. It is now up to us to step forward. And I said, this is what I say, insider information is good, but every insider has its own information. The one insider that I looked at that seems to be have some good ideas is Ron Paul. You listen to what he has to say, because he says a lot of what Roger Stone says. There's a lot of corroboration, so this is what you're looking for. You're looking for not necessarily what a person says. You sort of listen to Roger Stone, you follow his work, you see what he says, you take your notes. Then you go to another source like Robert David Steele or Ron Paul. You take your notes. And a lot of the stuff that's for the Council of Foreign Relations, the CFR, a lot of these different organizations have lectures. They have public lectures that you can find on YouTube. And sit down, you watch the lecture, you sit through the lecture, you take your notes again, and you add them to your thing. And so what happens, Roger Stone actually is sort of a pinnacle, he's the face for all of this sort of intelligence work. Looking at what the insiders know, because a lot of times the people who are writing the books, they're writing their memoirs, they're doing what they did in the past, and a lot of these sort of their historical references being written by people who lived through these various different events in history. This sort of the Cold War, Ronald Reagan. How did Ronald Reagan deal with the Cold War? What was his tactics? Who did he use? Who were his advisors? Because you see, they have a lot of different advisors, and we are seeing that there's a real tussle. If you watch what's going on in the news, 1 week they'll come up, whoa, we're going to attack North Korea. Then they step back a little bit for the next week. Oh, well, we're not going to attack. We may well use sanctions, and then they come back and we're going to attack South Korea. Is it? People are looking like, what's wrong with the United States? And the thing is, what's wrong with the United States is you have a lot of different groups of advisors that the president has, and it depends on who the advisors he's talking to. This is and listening to, right? This is what's going to shape the foreign policy. And so what happens is this sort of like what's going on with foreign policy has to do with the different groups of advisors. And the thing is, the people have to get up there and say, okay, we have to have a stake at the table. We have to have people that say, hey, look, there's an alternative to these interventionist wars. There's an alternative to regime change. And these alternatives are not necessarily democratic. Matter of fact, most of the alternatives that have worked historically under Nixon and Reagan, these are not certainly democratic ideas, but they're why China is beating us, why India is beating us, what's going on in India, why is their economy changing? Well, they've picked up Reaganomics. China, if you want to see what happened, basically after Reagan left, you've had 30 years of Clinton democracy, right? The Clinton way, right? So go into China for the last 30 years and see what their economics is like. You see they're picking up Ronald Reagan stuff. They're doing what Ronald Reagan, his we'll call open market economy, or the free market economy, where you have a lot of small companies and they're diversifying. Well, this is what you see going on for the last 30 years in China. And so compare the Chinese economy to the European, which chose not free market capitalism, but a monolithic socialist capitalism. And that's right, socialists have their own capitalism. And what capitalism do they want? What capitalism do they need? Because they're looking for a monolithic bank, a monolithic a single economic system, right? A single government, one worldwide government run by who? By the bankers, by the elite politicians. And this is what we're seeing. We say, well, the Clinton's not a real socialist. Oh, yes, she is. Because she's working for a one world system. That's what socialism is. Socialism is one world system. It's not about freedom. It's never been about freedom. It's always been about government control. The initial selling points for socialism is freedom. Once you get into it, and once you start working with it, it's not about freedom at all. And so you can see the difference between China. China grew because it followed Ronald Reagan's example. We shrank and have the economic problems that we had today because we followed the European model, which was the socialist model. And so there are ways through economic development that you can change a country like North Korea. And this, don't forget, both Russia and China were a lot like North Korea. They've opened up a lot since then with economic development. This is where we need to go. If you want money, you want economic development, you want everyone to be prosperous, and have a hope to end poverty, then that's the direction we have to go in. It's there in history now. We've got 30 years of this now. So hopefully we can continue on in our discussion. In about a week or so, I'll try to get more up. I'm now up here at my new facilities up in Northern Ontario. This is my second set of my second office. I'm going to try to upload from here. It's using 4G, but we'll see how it works. So this is a test in many ways to see how things are going to move forward. Anyways, I will see you next episode of Tweetline Plus, and we'll continue on with our discussion on moving forward and getting ready for 2018. Who we want to elect. What are the standards?
Provoke, inform and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Academia University. Open, free, that means no tuition, and no entrance restrictions.
Welcome to the library, and I am the librarian. I am the professor. And professor of what? Professor of physics.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Free speech rules here at Democratic Earth.